Hey, now if you're watching this, you're either watching this in one or two ways. I'm either in your ears or you can see me on YouTube, one or the other. But I have just brought back the podcast of Holistic High Performance after a very long stint of it not being live. Now, truth be known, there's a couple of different factors for that, right? The first factor is that life has been lifing, and the very first thing for me to be dropped is my podcast. And I don't mind that, and I don't mind admitting that because at some point there has to be a trade off in what you're doing, and there has to be a trade off for something in order to build something else. And for me, it was about building my life, and I'm okay with that. The other kind of reasons for it is that I have personally been in a messy middle period of my life and my business because I've been dancing around like lots of different ideas and trying to figure out what my next step is and trying to find clarity on that. And when I found the clarity, I was missing the permission, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But I just want to say I'm really glad that I'm back. Really glad that I'm creating this podcast. And if you're new here, welcome. If you've been here from the get go, fucking thank you. Um, it's been a journey, and last week Holistic High Performance turned 3, and what a wild journey that's been because in Holistic High Performance turning 3, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on my own journey, my both personal and in business, and I realized I have been making a huge mistake up until this point. And the mistake that I've been making is I haven't actually been documenting my journey. Now, I'll go into actually why and how I came to that realization, and I'll kind of, it also is linked to the permission piece. But for me, I actually, on a hike this morning, and just give it like a little story and context, I recorded a little piece of content for the blog that I'm going to put out. I've committed to making 30 days of like daily blogs just to kind of give an insight as to what it means to build a business, be a parent, be a present in your life, and not burn out, not lose yourself, and live in alignment with your values as best as you possibly can, and all the ups and downs that come with that. But I created something today in creating that video, and part of what I spoke about was around choice, meaning, and change. Now, when I look back at my journey, right, and I said this to the Mavericks earlier, I the very first workshop I put out there, the very first something that I wanted to sell right to people was the CMC method. Now the CMC method is CMC as my initials, but the CMC method was choice, meaning, and change. And I remember putting it out there and putting it live, and it was all around how you can make a choice to create a new meaning for your life and then have the courage to make the change. And nobody bought it. Nobody bought into it. I'm pretty sure I only got like 3 likes from it, and I remember taking it down immediately. And I remember being part of this networking group and putting it up, and they didn't bite into it either. And I saw this as such a personal like feedback of this is shit, this is shocking. And here I am, like almost 3, 4, 5 years later in that journey, putting it out there again and coming back to oranges. And I had a little giggle at myself this morning. I was like, if the version of me back then would have believed in myself enough to have kept going, even with that as an ideology, even with that as a program, even with that as a system, where would I be? And look, in that sense, I can look back through two lenses of, where would you have been if you fucking believed in yourself more? But then I also realized that actually it's been part of my journey, and I can look at it now and laugh and go back and like, I'm back to origin, and it's fucking brilliant. And that's the choice I'm making, right? So the lesson in that though is there's gold in your story. And the reason I say I've made a huge mistake is that I haven't actually been sharing my journey and sharing my story as best as I possibly can. And the biggest reason for that is the permission piece. And I want to speak about that because I think it might be where a lot of people might find themselves as well, either building their business or building their life. And for me, when I started to make this transition into helping people with more business style problems and business style challenges and finding more alignment, there was a title that I didn't want to claim, and it was business mentor. And there was a dance between not wanting to claim it because it felt misaligned, because I didn't want to be put in the same box as the rest of the people that I've experienced, and it also just felt really misaligned because I care about business. I love business, and business is an active part of my conversation on a daily basis. But I really care about the human behind it. and I care about the person as to whether they're actually building a business that lights them up or not, whether their business actually fuels their life or not, whether their business excites them or not. And when I think back to my journey of leaving photography and starting up coaching, it happened because I gave myself permission to try something new. And when I was reflecting on my journey from that time, from photography right up until to where I am now, what I've realized is there have been moments in my journey every couple of years where I personally have evolved as a human being and I personally have grown, and my business needed to come with me. My business needed to grow with me. And that's the lesson that I want to give you here in from a permission piece is, if you're to give yourself permission on anything today, it's to give yourself permission to, wherever you are in your journey, wherever you are, whether you own a business, don't own a business, want to start a business, whether you are wanting to explore your potential a little bit more, is give yourself permission to follow your curiosity. Because when I look back at it now, if I had stayed in photography, I would have been staying because of what I thought people would have thought of me for leaving. And at that time, I gave myself permission to explore my curiosity. And I explored my curiosity because every book that I was reading, every podcast that I was listening to, every information that I was soaking wasn't about photography. It was about like coaching and mindset and resilience and self-development and self-improvement and NLP and subconscious work and nervous systems and somatics and everything. And I followed my curiosity, and that's what led me to do my coaching qualification. And when I remember specifically coaching as part of the course, and I was like, this is it. I fucking love this. Now, you might think, great, you found your thing, but in that journey of 5 years from starting that coaching business, I have gone through different fine tunes and redefinitions of what it meant to continue to build a business with me. So, to give you context to that, when I started my business as a coach, I started it by naming it the Mindset Coach. And the mission was I wanted to help people build more resilience, build more confidence, build more belief in themselves, and to know that they could make the choice to create new meaning and to make the change in their lives. And as I kind of grew and evolved in that, by year 2, something was starting kind of to feel misaligned. I was getting a pull towards something else and I couldn't put my finger on it. And when I look back on that pattern that has been at play, is I've, as a person, have grown exponentially, right? I've done a lot of inner work, I've done a lot of therapy, I've done a lot of coaching, I've done a lot of somatic work, I've done a lot of NLP, I've done a lot of all the things, right? And I've grown. And every single time I got the pull towards something different and something better that I didn't always have clarity for, the more curious I got with it, the more I realized that it was just the internal version of me saying we need to level up and we need to find a little bit more alignment. So I now know that, like, before I used to look back on those times and be like, God, how many times have I changed things up? How many times have I pivoted? How many times have I did something new? Like, if I had just stuck to something, and I often think about photography, if I just stuck to photography, if I just stuck to the Mindset Coach, if I just stuck to this, and actually, call that, like, you can call it ADHD if you want. I call that someone following their passion, someone following the curiosity, and someone following what lights them up, and someone building their business and allowing their business to grow and evolve with them. Not always having all the answers, but allowing it to grow with them as they grow themselves as an individual. And my lesson in all of this is you have a need to give yourself permission to know that at any point you can have a pivot. At any point that you can make a change. At any point that you can decide, actually, I want to grow and I want to evolve here and I want something different. You don't have to know what that different looks like right now. But the permission piece for you to give that is, give yourself permission to explore that. And within that has been, for me, one of the determining factors to get me to where I am today, is that I gave myself permission to explore what lit me up, to explore where my curiosity was starting to go and flow towards. And even if I look at Holistic High Performance now, like, I didn't set out to coach business owners. I didn't set out to do all those things. But as I grew and as I evolved and as I understood myself more, it became apparent in who I wanted and how I wanted to help more. So my niche revealed itself the more I got to know myself. and who I wanted to help and how I wanted to help has evolved as I evolved myself. And that is the biggest thing here, because I think a lot of people in business, you hear people talk about niches, you hear people talk about niching down and finding your avatar and all that stuff. It's really hard to know your niche if you don't know yourself. It's really hard to know your niche if you don't understand yourself. It's really hard to know what you want to sell and why you want to sell it if you don't fundamentally know who you are. So, when I look back on every time that I was called to pivot or change or create something new or kind of be driven towards something else in terms of exploration, I could have ignored the call. And I know now in hindsight, if I ignored the call, I would have been ignoring my potential. Whereas now I'm starting to build towards my potential and starting to know that the number one thing that has gotten me to that point, to where I am today, right, is the fact that I explored my curiosity and gave myself permission to pivot, even if everything was going great, right? Even if I felt that, I didn't have all the answers, I just followed my curiosity. I followed what lit me up. And the more I started to understand and know myself, the more I started to understand and know my business and who I wanted to help and how I wanted to help them. And I just started there, right? So the bit in all of this is, if you're listening to this, is the biggest thing I know now in reflecting on my journey, right, is I started this podcast episode and this video saying that I haven't been sharing my journey. And when I look back on my journey didn't start with success. My journey didn't start with a thriving business. My journey started with a hospital bed. My journey started with me lying on my hospital bed, being so fucking annoyed and distraught and mad and angry at myself for still not being able to end my life, for being fucking alive. And in the second moment, the next thought I had was, hold on a second, Kira, I just took a fucking, I don't know what it was, a light bulb moment for me. You can keep going the way that you're going, not talking, not not open up, not asking for help, none of those things. Or you could make a choice to create a new meaning, to do something different with your life. And in that moment, I realized that I had a choice for the very first time in my life. And you'll hear me speak about that sentence so much, because that was the moment that changed everything for me. In that moment, I gave myself permission to live fully. And from that moment, what are we now, like almost 12 years ago? From that moment, I made that choice to fully live. I immersed myself into putting myself forward for therapy, putting myself forward for counseling, putting myself forward for somatic work, putting myself forward for anything that was going to potentially help me learn more about myself, learn more about why I thought the way I did, learn more about how I could take more control of my life, learn more about how I can feel better, right? But it was choice after choice after choice after choice. And I realized that I was in control of that. But then when I started to feel better, I realized that I couldn't sit on that information. I realized that I didn't want to squander that. So I started speaking out about it. I started sharing my story. And that's what's built my business. Sharing my truth, speaking my story. Only now I've realized is that while the story has remained the same, while the mission of wanting to help people has remained the same, and to give people what I never had, to share the tools that I never had, I just haven't been doing it for this current chapter, for this current phase of my life, for business. I've been doing it for where I've been, not where I'm going and not where I am. And that's what I want to help people with, because what I realize now is I've always wanted to heal out loud. I've always wanted to grow out loud. I've always wanted to share out loud. And it has come with a lot of judgment from people. It's come with a lot of resistance from people, sometimes particularly from people close to me. Why do you always have to put that out there? Why do you always have to share? Because there might be someone in my position who needs to hear what I have to say, and I want to be the person who can actually help them, right? And that's what it's always been about. And now, as I step into HHP and realize that I've been sitting on that story, that's what I want to do as well, because I know in my heart of hearts, because I've been through it myself, that there are so many people out there that are struggling, right? That think because they're not succeeding, because they're not been able to move forward, because they're burnt out, they're feeling fried, they're feeling stuck, they're feeling trapped. They think it's their fault when it's not, right? How they've been building is what's actually at play, because probably how they've been building has been completely misaligned. Now, the purpose of this podcast and the purpose of me sharing my story and putting things out there more and more is to show you, sorry, I'm battling with the light today, to show you what's possible when you create a new way for yourself, when you build in a new way. And I want to be the living proof of that. And this is come off the back of a couple of weeks ago. We had Ben Coomber come in and share his journey, share his story for the Mavericks. And he said this one sentence to me and to all of us. And it just slapped me in the face so much. And this has been the catalyst. So thank you, Ben, for why I'm sharing this journey and why I'm so passionate about it, because I realize it's the same. Now, he said, be the frequency of the solution. Yeah, what solution are you selling? Be the frequency of it. And from that hospital bed to where I am now, I wanted people to realize, as soon as I realized that you can have internal freedom, and when you get to know yourself and you create that internal freedom for yourself, fucking incredible things happen. I want to do the same for business owners. That you can still have internal freedom, and that your internal freedom can give you external freedom, and that your external freedom should give you back more freedom for your life, that it should be the vehicle for your life, not be the thing that traps you from living your life. It's always been about freedom for me. It's always been about potential for me. It's always been about helping people for me. And I just now want to tell the story of where I'm at and how we can build this together, because I stopped following business coaches who were teaching me hustle. I stopped trying to fit myself into frameworks that just weren't aligning with my values. I stopped building in a way that wasn't aligned with my values, and that's been fucking hard. And I stopped treating my business and myself like a fucking machine who had no emotions or feelings or needs or wants or desires. And I started to acknowledge myself. And I want to help you realize that for yourself. I've made more mistakes than I can count. I've got more things wrong than I can count. I've burnt out so many times more than I can count. And this is the journey of helping you not do that. Because I remember having a conversation, I'll end it with this, having a conversation with a coach, a really well established coach. And we were having a conversation around helping people. And I said part of my mission is to basically showcase my mistakes so other people don't have to live them. And we got into this kind of like heated argy-bargy back and forth discussion, because their definition of that was that people need to learn their own mistakes. Now, I agree to a certain point with that statement that people, yes, need to learn their own mistakes, but the whole point of coaching someone, the whole point of mentoring someone is to help them either A, avoid the shit that they don't need to be going through, and then B, help them through those like mistakes if they make them. Now, if you can learn from mine, then I can speed up your process to get to where you want to go faster, because you don't have to go through the same mud and the same shit that I did. If you're willing to take on the lessons, and if you're willing to take what I share with you and apply it to your own life and your success and your potential. That's it. And that's my mission. I want to help people learn from all the shit that I've been through and all the shit that I've had to go through in life and in business. And that's the journey that we're starting. So if you're new here, I'm glad you're here. I can't wait for you to hear. If you've been here from the very beginning, this is a new story. This is a story I've been living for the last 5 years, but a story that I haven't been telling properly ever. And I'm going to do that. The take from this video is, if you're being called to pivot and make a change, you will know. And you will know because you'll feel it in your bones. You'll feel like you're not really settling. You'll feel a bit agitated. You'll feel not yourself. Everything will start to feel a little bit like resistance. You'll start to feel a bit antsy and tense. You're being called higher. You're being called to pivot, and you're being called to realign to better, right? And I want you to listen to that. That's the lesson I want you to take from today's podcast. You're being called to pivot because you're being called higher. And if you ignore that, you will only get more of what you're currently experiencing, right? Give yourself permission to pivot. Give yourself permission to get curious. Give yourself permission to be willing to explore more and better for yourself, right? Be willing to just try something. Be willing to put yourself out there and align more to what is currently lighting you up. You don't have to make it a business. You don't have to make it anything. Just fucking follow the pull. Follow it. Explore it. And see what comes up. And from there then, you'll start to realize actually, I want to spend more time over here. I want to have more conversations like this. I want to help more people with X, Y, and Z. And it will start to naturally flow as you explore it more. So yes, that is the main takeaway from today's episode. I'm going to do weekly episodes as we go, and let's build it together.